Hi, welcome back to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we interview people managing people. Our special guest is Bob Garcia. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey Lance, thanks for having me.
Bob, I've called you a powerhouse in HR and an organizational effectiveness leader with over 20 years of experience. You've transformed workplaces. Um, you're not just an HR leader. You're a change evangelist and an innovation champion. You've been the principal of Coeus Human Capital Consulting, and you've been the former head of DEI at Hinge Health. You've built programs that just don't check boxes; they create real impact. Bob, I wanted to delve into organizational effectiveness and change management. Can you share an example with our audience of large scale organizational change, any initiatives that you led, and what were the key challenges and how did you drive adoption?
I think thanks for this opportunity, Lance. I think the most rewarding thing I've ever done in terms of helping to change a culture and affect a wider organizational change was the time I spent with the U.S. submarine force when we were getting ready to integrate women onto submarines. This was, it was around 2010. And I had gone on, I was a naval reservist, and I sat down with my active duty counterpart, and they were getting ready to start letting people know this was going to happen. And we had the luxury of a 2-year training pipeline for people to go through nuclear power programs and training. And so we knew we would have about 2 years to get folks ready. And to get the boats configured and to make sure that we gave this a good effort. So we looked at what the key stakeholder groups were that we had to talk to. We looked at the key messaging that we wanted to get across. And we also worked with the 3-star admiral, his name was Vice Admiral Donnelly, and talked with him about being that person that could lead this effort, be the head evangelist, if you will. And he was amazing. He couched this in terms of being about talent, not about gender. And he was absolutely right. He was looking at how do we best staff up these boats for the Navy of the future. And we were able to take that point of view and use it as the primary talking point to pivot off of for all the other conversations that we had. And I think that that is the key thing that you need to do when you're the 3-star that has the authority or when you're just a commander like myself, when you don't really have the authority to get people to change their mind, but you have to just try and impress upon them the benefits and the return on investment to making these changes. This is the program I'm most proud of because we've had the least incidents. And when you think about it, changing an organization's culture that had been in place for over 100 years
Yeah.
and to have minimal pushback, I think that's pretty successful. But that's not something I did all by myself. I was just a small piece of the team, but nevertheless, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, I would imagine something like that, putting women in submarines would be, again, culturally a huge change if you think of the sort of, that I'm just amazed, that it happened. Did it take a long time to implement and sort of, a lot of workshops and communication? How would you get the word out about that this is happening? And, or is it easier in the military because they have to, because they're told to? I'm curious.
A lot of people think that it's easier in the military because you can just order somebody to do something, but
Right.
really you have to work through the change problem as if you were doing it in a corporate environment. We had the luxury of having 2 years from when we started and when people and the first women first went into the training programs to when they got onto the submarines or the boats, as we call them. So we had that time to get people used to it, and that was enough time to get those first boats used to the idea of having women come aboard. It was also enough time to reconfigure them because the primary logistics concern would be sleeping arrangements, right?
Right.
And on a submarine, it's not like a cruise ship or even like a warship. It's a lot more cramped. And so you have to be really careful about who comes on board and where are they staying. The Navy has that down to a science, and so that 2 years that they had to prepare was enough time to put the processes in place to make sure this succeeded. And along the way, as this program was scaled, they took learnings. What went well, what didn't go well, and what can we change to make sure it goes well in the future, and what can we reinforce that we know went well in the past.
Right. Right. Well, that's pretty powerful. And any tips for managers? Let's say they're not in the military; they're leading a smaller scale changes, like a team restructure or a division restructure. What would you suggest
I
as a
think you have to
starting
do the
point?
same. Yeah, I think that's a great question, Lance, because you have to do exactly what Vice Admiral Donnelly did. You have to ask, why are we doing this? If the answer had been, well, I think it's the right thing to do, that's the wrong answer. It could be the right thing to do, but does it make sense for the business? The answer needs to be because this is good for the business. And then the next messaging point that we need to talk about is why. This is why. This is the increased ROI that we're going to get. This is how it's going to help us sell more product. This is going to how it's going to help us be more effective, how it's going to help us retain our employees, how it's going to reduce attrition, any of a number of things. No change we make is going to do everything, but it has to do something. And that's the thing we really need to look at.
Right, right. Great. Okay. Also, I'm curious about advice for our listeners, tips for fostering inclusion in, let's say, a hybrid workplace where not everyone's in every week. Have you had to work with that where, people working remote and on site and variations of any tips around that?
Yeah, return to office is what it's commonly referred to in the United States. That's been a dicey topic because employees in the U.S. have gotten used to working remotely full time, and now different managers have made the decision that they want people in either part time in a hybrid organization or full time in a full time organization. And is that good or bad? That's a discussion for a different point in time in a different podcast. But if we
Okay.
want someone to make the change, what we need to do is be very transparent with them about why we're doing
Right.
this and about what they will get out of it. If managers truly believe that the collaborative environment increases when people are in the office, they need to not only say that, but they need to show that as well. And they
Right.
can't be afraid to say, you know what, when we had our team on site, uh, we got X amount more work done than when we were just virtual and looking on webinars and Zoom meetings and the Skype and other tools that we were using. If you just very kind of broad about it and say, I just think it will be better, that doesn't convince anyone. And I think anybody above an individual contributor needs to be held accountable for saying why we want to do things. It's important. I often tell people when we make changes, we're doing this because we're running a business. We're not running a charity. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the charity, but
Yeah.
even in a charity, you have to document why something makes sense for you to do.
Right. Right.
In a business and a going concern, you have to make sure that you're operating in the black, that you're operating at a profit.
Yeah.
And any cultural change or any change to your working environment that you make, like changing the amount of time you want people actually in the office, you have to tell them this is why and show them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Great. Um, One of my topics is always stakeholder communication and executive buy-in. When you're working across, let's say, global teams, multiple stakeholders, different divisions, different cities, how do you ensure alignment and clear communication? Can you share a time with our listeners where you've had to navigate competing priorities, where maybe one division buys in early, another one's sort of on the fence, and the third one's going the other direction, or they're sticking to the legacy?
Yeah, when I was in management consulting, I had one client where they had a very rigid structure. It was very much this is what headquarters said. You have to salute and you need to do it. And I understood that because I was in the military, so I could create the talking points around that. But I also created the background for managers because it's so important that once leadership says, this is what we're doing, and they explain it to management, management is able to take that message and become the second level evangelists to the workforce and say, you know what, I can't answer all your questions, but I can answer the basic questions. And this is why we're doing that. That works in a very structured model. If someone works in a more federated model, where there is a headquarters or there's a central office, but you have regions or branches or however you're organized that don't directly report in, they're just a subsidiary or whatever they're categorized as. They need to be brought along and convinced sometimes. So the important thing there is to look at all the different choices you have of different branches or different regions or however the company is split up and say, who are my early adopters? And who are the people that want to make this change because they see clearly this will be good for their business? Those are the ones you want to work with first. and to say, hey, let's jump in with both feet. Let's demonstrate why this is good, and then share that as a learning across the corporation and say, here's what's happened. This is how we made this work for us. This is the increase in return on investment. This is the increase in productivity and effectiveness. And then try and bring those others along. Typically, you'll have a bell curve in any business, and you'll be able to get most of the people. It's that last 15 to 10% that you might have to drag along. And then that's a conversation with leadership and the executive level, how they want to hire that or how they want to handle that. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Good. Excellent, Bob. How about your, I got a question about, I mean, you've been in the military and you've been in large organizations, and, I always jokingly say that, there's combat in both, but that's just, downplaying the actual. I'm just curious, have you had a job that you found in your career that was extremely difficult or rewarding, but at the same time, extremely challenging?
I think for me, the most rewarding jobs have been the most challenging ones, where I could see the benefit at the end of the day and knowing that I made a difference. So jobs like being able to change the culture of the submarine force. I was also, when I was in the Navy for 3 years, the Navy's Hollywood liaison. And although that might seem like a fluffy job, we got to do some things that made a lot of people happy and that really reinforced the positive image of the Navy. The last big movie I did was Apollo 13, which I'll tell you what, was a joy to make. Ron Howard was the director, and he's just an amazing guy. If you ever have a chance to work with him, yeah. I would take it in a heartbeat. The toughest jobs are those jobs that are just have a really tough or toxic environment, and you feel like you're constantly treading water or stuck in quicksand, and you just can't see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things I wish I could change in my career in my 30s is having a mentor or a sponsor be able to just kind of shake me and say, Bob, sometimes you just have to understand this is not your game. Right. Or it's time to take your ball and go somewhere else. When I was 38, one of my mentors told me that I was in a situation that really wasn't workable. And he said, I'd help you if I could. I can't help you. My advice is to take your ball and go someplace else and go where you can succeed. And it was the toughest advice anybody ever gave me. And it was the best advice anybody ever gave me. And every single time I see him, he was the one-star admiral that I worked for at one point in my career. I tell him, you made my career because you helped me with this advice.
Yeah. It's hard to take sometimes, but I guess you're fortunate at that point in time that somebody gave you that, and good that you listened to it, because, it is what it is, right? It's very challenging sometimes where your ego's in the way, or you've been going down a road for a certain amount of time and it's comfortable. And you're like, why would I stop doing this? Why would I do something else? And, I talk to a lot of people about pivots in their careers, and, it's sometimes it comes out of an emergency, but other times it's almost a gift if someone was to tell you that and you listen to it and take that jump. So, Bob, I'm just conscious of time. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get a chance to chat again. I know if people can find you, you've got a website. It's www.coeusa.com, and they can also find you on LinkedIn, correct?
That's correct. And thank you so much for having me, Lance. It's been a pleasure.
Great, Bob. And just to tell the audience, I think you are looking for consulting gigs and other things out there in the marketplace that fit your HR background and your operational background. Am I correct?
Right. Right now, I'm in the market for fractional work, different consulting projects that might fit what my skill set is, and also looking at jobs as a CHRO for startups or other small companies.
Excellent. Thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch up with you soon, Bob. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Lance.
Take care. Bye-bye.